Hello and welcome. This is Pam. Today I will be sharing with you the very best diet for multiple sclerosis. And it's not just for people that are suffering with multiple sclerosis, but it's also for anyone who's dealing with chronic disease, which are caused by a parasitic infestation. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. I was clinically diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of just 28 years old. I was told that there was nothing that I could do, that I would be completely disabled in time. And boy, was that expert wrong. Very early on, by the grace of God, I learned that what I was dealing with was an infection, a chronic infection in the body. And I learned that from reading several books by medically trained doctors. And so from there on, I learned more and more about the types of infections that were involved, treated them well enough that I was able to live MS free now for over 35 years. And we've had the amazing privilege of coaching hundreds of people, I would say thousands by now, all over the world, helping them to recover from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. So what I'm going to share with you comes from 20 years of personal experience and research, and also working with many people all over the world. And through our research, we've really come to understand that number one, all chronic disease, that there are infections in the body, and that's what's really causing disease. And then what is their favorite food? So that really helps us to figure out which diet to follow, because there are so many diets out there. There's so many things we should eat, we shouldn't eat, we should have meat, we shouldn't eat meat, etc. And so really we want to obviously eat a nutritious diet, but we want to consider the state of our health. We want to consider what is going on in our body, because maybe if we were a healthy person, that, not a lot, but fruit would be fine, like a banana, for example. But if you are infested with parasites that feed off of the sugar in bananas, then that's not the most ideal food for you at that time. So today I'm going to share with you the Live Disease Free diet. We've called it the Live Disease Free diet because it's not paleo. It's lower carb than paleo, but it's higher carb than keto, and we're not having dairy products. So it's kind of in between paleo and keto. And when you follow this diet, and that's simply getting your carbs low enough, down as low as 30 to 40 total grams of carbs, ketogenic diet, they go down to 20 total grams of carbs roughly, but we're between 30 to 40 total grams of carbs. And in that sweet spot, that ideal target zone, that's where we can really notice a lot of symptom improvements. And I'm going to share with you some of the amazing symptom improvements by just following the diet. And this is what we do before we start treating the parasites. It really helps us to treat the parasites more effectively. We tolerate the treatments better. We're able to use combinations of treatments, and we're able to recover more quickly. And yes, we can recover from all kinds of incurable diseases. So with so many diets, it is really confusing, and it's really important to understand what the state of our body is. So a parasite is any living microorganism that causes us harm. It could be worms. So a lot of us when we think about parasites, we think about worms, but it could also be bacteria and fungi and also protists. So those are kind of like the four main categories. And you're probably wondering, well, Pam, what about viruses? Well, viruses, they can act parasitic also, but I'm talking about living microbes right now. So we're going to talk, because a virus, if it's not living and it doesn't eat our food, then it really doesn't matter what we eat. Obviously, we want to have nutrition, but viruses do not feed off of our food, whereas worms, protists, bacteria, and fungi do. So that's where we're going to talk about them. And I have shared a lot of research. I've shared research with you that with respect to the parasites, their favorite source of energy is sugars and carbohydrates. just one sec here. I just want to update that. So sugars and carbohydrates are their favorite source of food. So I've been talking over the last couple of weeks about, for example, malaria and the huge link of a Babesia malaria type protist, which would be causing cardiovascular disease or vascular abnormalities in MS, and how huge that is. And when you start to look at that type of a protist, they love glucose. So all carbohydrates are breaking down to different types of sugars, and one of them is called glucose. And they can actually cause hypoglycemia, so they can make your blood sugar drop a lot. So we want to pick a diet that feeds our body with a lot of nutrition, but it greatly reduces the food to the parasites that are causing all of our horrible symptoms and the diseases that we're dealing with. And so that's why the Live Disease-Free diet is so powerful. Of course, if you go to a paleo diet, that's a great start. That's definitely decreasing the processed carbs. But if you really want to get the greatest symptom improvements from diet, then getting your carbs a little lower, you will notice like dramatic changes in how you feel. So we talked about what a parasite is, and we know that whenever we're dealing with chronic disease, then there's inflammation is involved. Our doctors will tell us that, and that's a buzzword, right? Is that we want to decrease inflammation. And what I want you to think about is that inflammation is just the war zone. It's the area where your immune system is fighting something. The primary job of your immune system is to fight infections, to fight parasites, to fight pathogenic microbes that are stealing nutrients from us, that destroy our tissue, that produce poison. So that's the immune system's job, is like surveillance and to take them out. And sometimes, like in any war, our good guys, our soldiers are suffering and they're not able to keep up with these infections. And so then our immune system needs help. It doesn't need us to suppress the immune system. And I've shared in my masterclass training that in science, they know that there's at least 17 different ways that these parasitic microbes, they cause inflammation and immune dysfunction in our body. So that's all known in science. So what I would love for you to do is just go ahead and type any questions you have about diet, about what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, why you can't have that, and can you ever have it in the future? Absolutely. When you treat the parasites well enough, you restore balance, then sure, we can have healthy, different types of foods that are a little bit higher in carbs for sure, but we're going to have it in moderation. So I've shared with a lot of my live events that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease caused by parasites. So the last couple of weeks, I've shared a lot of information, like it's not groundbreaking because it's in the scientific literature. It's just that nobody's talking about it. It's awful. There's so much evidence that shows that MS is more of a vascular disease and not an autoimmune disease. It is immune cell mediated, meaning that our immune cell is fighting something. Our immune cells are fighting something, but they're saying, well, it's just your immune cells are fighting your nerve tissue for no reason, for no apparent reason. It's just attacking your own self. And I would really disagree with that. And the research and like the best hero doctors that I follow, they say there's always an infectious agent involved whenever they have this so-called autoimmune disease. So I've shared lots and lots of research about like a malaria babesia type protist involved with multiple sclerosis. This dates back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. All of this research has been just dropped. I've shared lots of research about Borrelia, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Again, many scientific papers dating back to the early 1900s. And then we know that Candida, there's a history of Candida overgrowth and, of course, mold with different types of diseases. But more recently, we've discovered that there's also worms involved. And we didn't know that before because we couldn't see them. We don't have good tests. Our doctors are not trained in recognizing the symptoms of parasitic worms or treating them. And they have been taught that there's no worms in developed countries, that we're not exposed to parasites in developed countries. That is a third world or underdeveloped country issue, and nothing could be further from the truth, because we do deworm our domestic animals, our pets. There's parasites in our soil. There are parasites in our water, but we're not drinking raw water. Hopefully, we shouldn't be, because that can really make us sick. So they are in our environment. It's just that we're ignoring them, and that's why we're running into problems with chronic disease. So there is tons of research that when we have chronic disease, we're in a state of dysbiosis, meaning we're out of balance. We have too many disease-causing pathogens and not enough health-promoting microbes. And when we're in that state, then we have all kinds of inflammation. And if we simply decrease the carbohydrates in our diet and eat lots of nutrition, so support our body, but decrease the food to the parasites, we start to notice the inflammation starts to decrease. We start to notice that we're feeling better, that we are able to sleep better, that our mood has improved, our cognitive function, memory, less pain, less spasticity. It's crazy how much symptom improvement we can have just by lowering our carbohydrates. And we call it the Live Disease-Free Diet because we have like a system in place. We've really kind of figured out like the do's and the don'ts and what is helpful and what is not helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some different important things about the Live Disease-Free Diet, but know that it is free. It is on our website, and you can just go to livediseasefree.com. You can even, while we're talking, you can pull up the cheat sheet. I'm going to go through that. I'm going to go through the different guidelines. I'm going to give you some meal ideas, and I'm going to share with you some amazing successes from students that right now are recovering from chronic diseases, including multiple sclerosis. So let's go over to the cheat sheet. So again, go to livediseasefree.com, go to our website. Under research in the main menu, you will see that it shows the Live Disease-Free Diet guidelines. And on that page, you'll notice that there's a couple of videos there, a really short video with the guidelines. There's also videos with what I eat. There's the PDF download, and that's what I'm reading off of right now. So the Live Disease-Free Diet guideline, or I should say the cheat sheet. First of all, let's talk about sugars. So again, sugars are, if you eat sugar, it's like putting gas on a fire if you have parasites, because it's their favorite food. So when we binge on sugar, the parasites will binge with us. When they binge, they're producing a lot of toxins. They're reproducing more quickly. There's more of them. They're causing a lot more inflammation. Our immune system is struggling to fight them and to get rid of them. So sugar is the worst food that we can eat when we have parasites. And this has been proven in science. Again, their favorite source of energy for most parasites is sugar, carbohydrates, and simple sugars. So Pam, can we have things like xylitol or the alcohol sugars? And what I say is that when you are in the recovery phase, it's best to get rid of everything that's sweet, because you want to get rid of your sweet tooth. These parasites make you crave sugar like a drug addiction. So it's really important to get rid of the sweet tooth so that you're not like in bondage to having this, to satisfying your sweet tooth. So we have no sugar. I mean, obviously, if you want to chew gum once in a while, I wouldn't do it every day, but having some xylitol, peppermint gum is probably fine, but you have to make sure they have not included any sugar in that gum. So we would have no sweeteners. So that means no stevia either. Sometimes stevia is some of the products, they will include sugar in them. And again, we want to get rid of our sweet tooth. We want our taste buds to change. They can start changing in as little as 1 to 2 weeks. And then we're not going to crave the sugars, like we won't really care. And so I call that freedom, because if you can get to a place where you're not craving sweets, it is total freedom, and you will crave the healthy foods. And then, so with respect to fruit, we have to be really careful, because fruit is nutritious, has a lot of vitamins and minerals, but is also much higher in natural sugar, which will feed the parasites. So we avoid all the super sweet fruits like even pineapple and bananas and melons. And we will have a very small serving of a lower sugar fruit. So that would be like berries. So maybe like an eighth of a cup of berries first thing in the morning, just a few for a taste, half a green apple or a small kiwi. And you have that 30 minutes before breakfast. When you have your fruit before breakfast, it digests well and it's not going to be mixed in with your other food and take longer to digest and ferment, which means that bacteria, the other parasites, are going to be eating the sugar from the fruit, and it just helps for your digestion to be better. So, but for some students, they just don't eat any sugar. Like they're really, really sick and they're suffering a lot. And they're like, I really don't need to eat any fruit right now. I want to really make those parasites quiet. And that's absolutely fine. Also, you can take a little bit of vitamin C on the side, but you will be able to have fruit again in the future once you have treated the parasites well enough. But be very careful with the fruit. And some people wonder, like, can I have like lemon juice, like lemon juice in my water, drink that all day? You need to look up the USDA guidelines for certain foods, like even lemon, and you'll see that the lemon juice, although it's tart, there's a lot of natural sugar in lemon juice. So I wouldn't drink it all day long. It is alkalizing, it is nutritious, but the sugar will feed the parasites. Same thing with lime. So if we have a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice on our salad, that's absolutely fine. Now let's talk about meat. So virtually all animal protein is fine, but we want to have it in as close to its natural state as possible. So if it's just like chicken breast or whole chicken or chicken thighs where they have not put a brine on it and it's just the natural meat, it can be ground hamburger, pork, turkey, chicken, but just be careful with things like ham and sausage and bacon because they are notorious for having sugar or honey added to them and different fillers, etc. So just whenever humans have had the opportunity to, change, like adding things to the meat, I would avoid it right now. And the key is if you want to have huge symptom improvements, you've got to be keeping this whole process really simple at the start. So don't add in a whole bunch of different things because then you're going to be, and if you're not noticing any difference, you're not going to notice what is helping and what isn't, like what is holding me back. But if you're just eating real meat that is not processed other than just ground up, but nothing has been added, that is fine. So make sure to avoid breaded meats and processed meats like sandwich meats. There's a lot of organic sandwich meats that have sugar added and fillers and binders added, and that will feed the parasites. Eggs. Some people say eggs should be avoided because a lot of people are allergic to eggs. And what I say is that if you feel you're sensitive to eggs, then avoid them. Otherwise, they're super nutritious. So most people can eat eggs. But again, you could be sensitive to any of the foods you're allowed to eat because of the leaky gut, because of the immune reaction to the leaky gut that we get from parasites in our gut. So whatever, if it's cooked kale, stir-fried kale kale period that bothers you, don't have it. Or if it's eggs, whatever. So eggs are absolutely fine, but again, try to just eat real eggs, not eggs that are mixed in a carton with you never know what's been added. All types of eggs are fine. And avoid egg substitutes. Dairy, we have found that our students tolerate butter. So that's the only dairy that we will have. We will not have yogurt or kefirs, no fermented dairy products, absolutely not. But butter seems fine. Ghee would be even better. That's where you melt the butter and you would just you take the fat and leave the little bit of milk behind. Vegetables. Vegetables are fine as long as they're lower carb. So that would be things like green and yellow string beans and asparagus and broccoli, cauliflower, the cruciferous vegetables. there's cucumbers, celery, there's lots, there's Chinese vegetables, there's so many low carb vegetables. Really what we're avoiding are the ones that are higher in carbohydrates. So the sweet potato, the white, brown, any kind of potato we would avoid, peas, corn, the carbs that stick to your ribs that make you feel full. We're avoiding those because they are much higher in carbohydrates. So in order to keep the total grams of carbs between 30 to 40 total grams of carbs per day, it's pretty challenging because we're still going to eat a lot. It's a very nutritious diet. We're working up to 9 to 13 servings of vegetables per day, as recommended by the USDA website. But we are just eating the vegetables that agree with us. Some of us might have inflammatory bowel. We're more prone to diarrhea. Then cook your vegetables. Don't eat them raw. And eat the vegetables that agree with you. Don't eat the vegetables that don't agree with you. You can even steam green vegetables also. So all those vegetables are fine. And then with respect to beverages, make sure that if you're having a tea that it is naturally caffeine free, not decaffeinated. If it's decaffeinated, it will still have some caffeine in it. And caffeine stimulates the parasites. So it does stimulate us and it makes us feel better, more energetic, but it also stimulates the parasites. And that's why it's really important not to have any caffeine while you are getting ready to treat and while you're treating the parasites in your recovery from chronic disease. We know that the parasites, the more active they are, as I mentioned, the more poisons they produce. They reproduce more quickly. They cause more stress on our immune system. So we want to make them as quiet as possible. Beverages, filtered water is great. So definitely I wouldn't drink tap water. You can even start with something like a Brita filter to take chlorine, taste, and odor out. Check your water in your hometown. Hopefully it doesn't have fluoride in it. Fluoride is pretty toxic, so I would definitely avoid fluoride if possible. And if you are using, let's say, reverse osmosis water, make sure you add minerals back into your water. Herbal teas are fine. If you are socializing with friends, then sparkling water is fine. And you could have things like bubbly and LaCroix. There's a whole bunch, like pretty much every grocery line, they have their own lines of bubbly waters. And they call them natural. Like if it has strawberry flavor, I really don't think that flavor came from strawberries. I know that when I was back in university, we could make all kinds of flavors and smells with just mixing different carbon compounds together. So that's probably what it is. If it's from carbon, they might say that it's natural, but it's not coming from a strawberry. I personally just like plain sparkling water. To me, that just tastes the best. And I add fresh lemon or fresh lime to that. And if you're using that for entertaining, visiting with friends, it's very refreshing. Can add some ice to it or have it nice and cold. It's really awesome. But you could do the other sparkling waters as long as there is no sugar in them. So that gives you some ideas for drinks. You can also chill the herb teas. They're very lovely. So there's things like peppermint and there's rooibos. There's a lot of different flavors of rooibos tea. There's the company Tega has a tea that tastes like Earl Grey. There's sleepy time tea. There's lemon ginger. There's so many different. Just be careful with a lot of fruity teas. I wouldn't have blueberry and apple because there will be natural sugar in adding those fruit. The grains, we avoid all grains, grains, because number one, they're very high in carbohydrates, but number two, when our digestion is impaired by these parasites, we're not breaking down the carbohydrates like we should. So that becomes more food for these parasites. And you'll notice a great improvement when you take things like rice and oats and quinoa, even the non-gluten grains, we avoid all of them, but while we're getting ready to treat. And you'll notice significant symptom improvements by doing so. Things even like flaxseed and chia seed, we avoid all of those also. If you've noticed, if you soak chia seed in water, it becomes like a jello, and that is all carbohydrate. and that will be feeding the infection. So we avoid all of those grains, and also like pasta. So we're not having any pasta, we're not having rice, and even things like amaranth, corn, wheat, millet, oats, barley, etc., avoiding all of the grains. Then, with respect to yeast products, so I know that sometimes there can be like supplements that have yeast in it for the B vitamins, but we would avoid all of the yeast products because when we have chronic disease, it's very, very common, if not always the case, where we have fungal overgrowth in our body. Also, fungus is kind of like the recycler. It's there. If there's a big mess, it's going to be cleaning it up and it will produce toxins, and it is hard on our immune system. So although the yeast products that we're eating are not going to give us a yeast infection, they're not going to infect us with yeast, but the fungus that's living in us could benefit from that. And our body would be very sensitive to yeast. So we don't need to add in any iffy foods, foods that could potentially make us feel worse. Nuts and seeds is something to be really careful with because nuts, yes, they're higher in fat, but they're also higher in carbohydrates and they're harder to digest. So it's really important that if you're having nuts and seeds, you just have the ones that are on this cheat sheet and not avoid things like peanuts and pistachios because they tend to have a higher mold count. But things like raw nuts and seeds, that would be pecans, almonds, hazelnuts, walnuts, make sure the walnuts are not moldy. Pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds. I have that you can eat nut butter on here, but honestly, we should probably take that off because a lot of the nut butters, there's trace amounts of sweeteners that can be added. And it's really easy to eat too much nut butter because it's ground up, it's concentrated. And nuts will make you feel, if you eat too many nuts, it'll make you feel horrible because it's a lot of food for the parasites. So some of our students that really have a hard time controlling themselves with fruit or nuts, they might avoid that altogether. If they're going to eat nuts, they might have like an eighth of a cup of nuts, mid-morning, mid-afternoon, but never after supper because, again, they're harder to digest. And if you're not digesting them well, then over the night, it goes to the parasites, and they're very active at night. The parasites are. Alcohol, we avoid all alcohol. Alcohol is a mycotoxin. And our liver right now, when we're dealing with a parasitic infestation that's causing chronic disease, that a lot of times alcohols are produced, organic acids, alcohol, etc. For example, even candida, I've shared in my masterclass training how it produces massive amounts of ethanol. And that really makes us feel like our brain is not working, right? It can make us feel tired. And then our body will, or our liver will break that down and we'll end up with acetaldehyde, which is the hangover chemical. So when we have a lot of parasites, our liver is already working hard and we do not need to add any more chemicals. There's nothing good about alcohol as far as being healthy. And it's just another big tax on our liver and on our body. So we avoid all alcohol in the recovery phase. And two, like things like wine and beer would be really high in yeast inside of those drinks. So like obviously vodka and tequila is less yeasty, but still you're dealing with the alcohol, which, and this is where alcohol is an addictive substance. And so many of us, like, we just think that we enjoy it because it's just like, something we enjoy. But when there's something that we enjoy, like caffeine, like coffee, for example, or alcohol, and they're addictive substances, then is it that we really enjoy it, or is it that the addictive part of it makes us want it more than we should? Because what you'll find is when you give up caffeine and you give up alcohol for a while, that, like, for me, it's been so many years, like, I really don't care. I really don't want it. Even alcohol, I would enjoy a glass of wine, not a lot, but a glass of wine. But now I'll have a sip of it and it's like, it's not really that good. And again, it's what do you value? So for me, having that second chance to live my life is so much more important than what I put in my mouth. I I have a very, very active life with my work, with my children and my grandchildren. Plus, we've got a bunch of animals here where we live. So for me, like, I want as much energy as possible because I'm so passionate about living my life. And you'll be like that too once you get your health and your life back. It'll be just like, I love this. I'm doing all the things that I haven't been able to do for so long. And you don't want anything to interfere with that. But if you have not had serious chronic disease and you want to go back to caffeine, you can. But then again, you're a slave to it. Like, and I've seen that in my husband. He gave up caffeine. But before that, it's just like the caffeine runs us, right? And it's so nice to be free from that. So, and your taste buds will change. As far as fermented foods, the only fermented food that we recommend at the start is raw sauerkraut. And when you can make your own, that is the most health promoting food that you could ever make or eat, especially a wild ferment. So when you take the, let's say, organic vegetables that have not been sprayed and you chop them up fine enough, and then you allow the bacteria and the microbes, the other microbes that are living naturally on those vegetables to reproduce, you get this diversity. You get all of these different species of microorganisms, and many of them will produce natural antibiotics to keep other pathogens in check. And that is really where you want to go, is starting to repopulate your microbiome with health promoting microbes, because many of us have been on antibiotics and it's really devastated our ecosystem. But think about your gut as like a lawn. And if your lawn is infested, if your gut is infested with parasites and your lawn is infested with different types of weeds, you can sprinkle the good grass seed in and it's not really going to take very well. So this is why it's really important that we're decreasing the weeds, decreasing the parasites, and then we're sprinkling the seeds of the health promoting microbes back, helping them to reestablish themselves so that we can have a thick, thick microbiome of health promoting microbes, like a healthy, thick lawn. Very, very similar. So the general guidelines is we are working up to 9 to 13 servings of vegetables per day. Some of you might not eat a lot of vegetables and you're like, oh, Pam, that is a lot. I can't do that. And you just start with what you can, right? And so like some of our students are super sick and they're nauseous and they don't have an appetite. They'll eat like a sparrow at the start, and they might eat 4 times a day, smaller amounts. But as you decrease the carbs, and the other things that we're doing also is we're taking a binder to absorb some of the poisons in the digestive tract, and we are working on our sleep. So those 3 things really gets us to a place where like we're feeling so much better. And we want to include enough healthy fat in the diet. So as we decrease the carbs, we are increasing the healthy fat. So we will have at least 4 tablespoons of healthy fats with our meal. And you might think that's a lot, but it's not that much. You might put some butter on your meat, and you might have some extra virgin olive oil on your lettuce, on your salad. You might put some butter on your vegetables that are steamed, or you might have a stir fry with some oil on that. So however you're cooking your vegetables or meat, you want to have at least 4 tablespoons of healthy fats. So that would be extra virgin olive oil. Coconut oil is fine. Again, all your fats and oils, try to get organic, cold pressed, right? As health promoting as possible. Avocado oil is fine. Olive oil, ghee, butter, all of that, and olive oil, the coconut oil is also fine. MCT oil is also great, another great option, because a good MCT oil will give you energy. It doesn't taste like anything, and it's just health promoting also. So that gives you some ideas of the the ratio. And I should mention too that so we're having animal protein with every meal. So for men, it's about 4 to 5 ounces of animal protein. For women, it's about 3 to 4, just so that you're satisfied. It helps to maintain your muscle mass, and it helps you to feel satisfied, and it's really great for cognitive function. So the mix of fat and protein really makes you feel clear-headed and like strong. If you just eat, like, let's say, carbohydrates with fat, you'll notice that you're starving in an hour, and you're not going to have that sustained energy. If you are underweight, which some of us are, then again, you have to really pay attention to the calories you're eating per day. If you eat enough calories, so if you eat the equal amount of calories to what you burn, you will maintain your weight. If you eat less calories than your body burns, you will lose weight. And if you eat more calories than you need, you will gain weight. So with this diet, you can never miss a meal. You can't miss a snack. Sometimes people need to eat 4 meals a day instead of 3. Isn't that different than what we're normally used to? We're used to starving ourselves or intermittent fasting for hours and hours, like for most of the day. It's like now you have to eat, and your plate should be full, not just like 3 little servings. And of course, if you're really sick and you're starting, then yes, start with what you can. Listen to your body. That is a really important message that we have with the Live Disease-Free diet, is you've got to listen to your body. And again, 50 total grams of carbs is fine, but the sweet spot seems to be between 30 to 40 total grams of carbs. So not net. You can check, you can plug in what you're eating into a free app on your phone. It's called the Chronometer app, CRO, Chronometer. And if you've downloaded, it's free, and you can make sure to set it so it's measuring total grams of carbs, not net. Because if you do net, it's going to not count the fiber, and then you'll think you're in the target zone, but you'll be way too high and you won't be in the target zone. And so in order to maintain your weight, you have to eat regularly. You can't miss meals, and you have to make sure that you're getting enough calories. So it's pretty easy. You can basically look online, like with your age, with your activity level, with your gender, how many calories should you have per day? And then you can divide that by 2. And so you know how many calories are going to you're going to take in by fat. And then you would divide that by how many calories are in a tablespoon of fat. And then you know for you how much fat you need to have in a day. And again, the healthy fats should be non-GMO, and they should be cold pressed, extra virgin. So olive oil, almond oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, and butter. Those are just some examples. You can find different oils, even like organic palm oil. So the saturated fats, if they're processed properly, they are fine to have also. But you would not want hydrogenated fats. And we talked about inflammatory bowel disease. Please listen to your body. If something doesn't agree with you, you don't have it. Things like carrots and avocados and beets and peppers and tomatoes, they are allowed on this diet, but as a garnish on your big salads. So you're having a plate full of low-carb lettuce, and you can add some cucumber, which is low carb, and if you want celery, it's a little bit of onion. But the carrots, the avocado, beets, and peppers and tomatoes are going to be garnishes, not servings. Because if you look up how many grams of carbs are in those foods, you'll see that they're really high. So yes, some people think that avocado is like high in fat. It's higher in fat, but it's also higher in carbohydrate. So if you eat a half an avocado, or if you eat a whole avocado, even one avocado would be almost half of your daily intake of carbs, and you need to eat a lot more than that to keep your weight up. Avoid all the foods you're sensitive to, and if a food is not allowed on this list that I shared with you before, then just avoid it while you are in the recovery phase. You're recovering from chronic disease that are caused by parasites. So we do avoid all the other fermented foods like the kimchi, the kombucha. So kombucha, it is a sugar ferment, right? And so we're avoiding that. Kefirs, yogurts, especially the dairy yogurt, but even other yogurts. So we're avoiding all of those, like coconut yogurt, even things like the milk. So the rice milk and the coconut milk and the soy milk, we don't have them because there is a significant amount of carbohydrates in those milks, and they're not very nutritious. So if they're not very nutritious, and they're just going to give you carbohydrates without the nutrition, we avoid them in the recovery phase. All right, so now I'm going to just double check on a couple of other things that are important. So, for example, like caffeine. So, caffeine can be present in tea, coffee, chocolate. So, yes, we are avoiding all tea, coffee, and chocolate that have caffeine. Alcohol, we talked about that. We talked about sweeteners. We talked about maintaining your weight. Let's talk about some different meal ideas. So, this diet is very simple, it's very easy to follow. So, it doesn't require like weird or expensive ingredients. It is nice to buy organic if you can, but like what right now, what I'm doing here in Canada is I'm going to local farms where I know that it's not certified organic, but I know that they really do not use a lot of chemicals, very minimal, because sometimes I see little worms in the broccoli, etc., which are kind of gross, but I kind of like the idea. And the vegetables are really good quality, like a lot of nutrition. So if you can buy your produce locally whenever you can, or have your own garden is even better, that is really awesome because you're going to get a lot more nutrition when you're allowing the produce to ripen on the vine before it's picked. When the produce is picked really early, which most is when you're accessing vegetables and fruit in the large commercial stores, they're quite deficient in nutrients. And you can tell they don't have the flavor, right? They don't have the same flavor that a vine ripened tomato or even broccoli that's grown really well in the dirt that you get locally, and it's cut and you're literally taking it home that day, or maybe it was cut the day before. The flavor in all of the produce is just so different. Even lettuce, and like sometimes you'll buy a head of lettuce and you have to throw half of it out because it's been beaten up so much from the transport. But when you buy a head of lettuce from these local farms, it's like every piece of lettuce is perfect and it's tender and it has so much flavor. And that flavor really helps you to see that it has a lot more nutrition in it. So it really correlates to the amount of nutrition in the vegetables. So very important that whenever you can purchase produce from local farms, you do so, because number one, you'll get a lot more nutrition and it's just super healthy for you. Different meal ideas. So of course, protein. So like that, my husband and I, we're empty nesters right now. So it's just us two living in the home. And we have, of course, like family on weekends that we feed, etc., because we love to get together with our family. But what we're very busy. And so like what we will do is we will batch cook. So like I will maybe cook 2 chickens, whole chickens. That's the cheapest also. And I will cook, or today I just did a big roast. I threw it, my husband had to do a night shift, so I threw it on early, and it's quite a big roast. So we'll have, and I know beef is getting really expensive. Everything's getting ridiculously expensive, but we would avoid all of the legumes and dried beans because they contain fiber and carbohydrates that we're not digesting, and the parasites will digest them. So, but like if you like pork, like some people don't like pork and some people do, but that is a fairly cost-effective option. It was really cute. We had some family in town last week, and my nieces, they cooked a meal for us, and they bought some pork tenderloin and they cooked it really nicely. It's so neat we entertained them a lot, and then they made a meal for us, which was really fun. So we had that and some broccoli, some salad, and then of course they had potatoes and I didn't. So you don't have to cook a separate meal, right? You can just cook so for example, like the meat, if you're barbecuing, you just don't put barbecue sauce on your hamburger or on your steak. You can put delicious herbs on your meat. So whether if you do, let's say, a chicken breast or a steak, or maybe you put some kind of beef on the barbecue hamburger patties, there are some nice spice blends. If you're going to use a spice blend, make sure you trust the spice blend. So like we went to Calgary, Alberta, and there's this little store and they have a bazillion different blends of herbs and spices, and they're really clean. They don't add anything, and I would trust them. Or you can make your own spice mix. I do that very often. So for taco, for chicken rub, like on the Traeger, chickens are very like juicy on the Traeger. They keep it locks in the moisture. So you can like we'll maybe do 2 chickens on the Traeger or in the oven, and or even fried chicken is fine. So like we will take chicken breasts and pound them flat and fry them quickly on either side and add rosemary. I love rosemary and thyme. I use that a lot. And marjoram is great too. So whatever herbs that agree with you. And how you don't get bored is you just make sure that you are using different flavors. So all the Mexican flavors are fine. So the cilantro and the garlic, like ginger is fine. And the curries are absolutely fine to have. They're really anti-inflammatory. And the Italian spices and herbs are all great. So that's how you avoid boredom with flavoring your different meals. So you can do a taco salad. You can have, let's say, if you cook 2 chickens, you can make stir fries out of them. You can, add different herbs to it to make different dishes. Delicious. Chimichurri is really great. That's another way to get some extra fat in. Homemade mayonnaise. I just love homemade mayonnaise. And just to add, you can add like chili, like hot chilies to make it a spicy mayo. You can also add like different herbs to make like a ranch type dressing for vegetables. Even like the green string beans, if they're raw, they're delicious if they're not tough. And that can be another crunchy vegetable to have. And you can make a big tub of vegetables and have it in the fridge. You can make a big salad and have that in the fridge. You can cook extra meat so that it's really quick and easy. And then, so for breakfast, I really like greens. I love arugula, but then switch it up with some more tender baby kale, or I like the spinach that's grown in the dirt. It has a lot more flavor, and to have that steamed. Don't eat spinach every day because it's a little higher in oxalic acid. It's a little harder on the thyroid, but if you're having it, mixing it up, right? So a lot of greens with some extra virgin olive oil. I don't even put lemon or lime in the morning. I just like it that way. I always have a couple of eggs. And the cholesterol issues are coming from inflammation in your blood vessels, coming from infections, not from fat. So our students that are on the cholesterol medication before they start, they notice that as they're increasing the fat, decreasing the carbs, treating the parasites, they notice that their cholesterol returns to normal. So again, with the beef, you can do broccoli beef. Like you can just think of different things. And if there's a recipe, you're thinking of something, you can always Google it and you can find a recipe that is like 5 out of 5, like maybe 200, 5 out of 5 reviews. You can sometimes read their notes of what they did, and you can find all kinds of great recipes, and you just modify them a little. You just make sure there's no cheese and no dairy in it, no sugar, but all the spices are absolutely fine. So we would use, let's say, lettuce for our burger. And I actually like, and it's funny, a lot of people are doing that now too. So the things that we've been doing for a few years, more and more people are doing it because they just feel better. So you can take, bigger leaves of lettuce and put the burger on, put some mayo. You can get mustard that just has apple cider vinegar in it. And so you can have mayo and mustard and the hamburger patty with like a slice of tomato on it, or a couple of slices of tomatoes if they're smaller, and some onion. And it's delicious. It's so good. And then you can have a green salad on the side, or at night, I really like to have like a couple of cooked vegetables, whether it's steamed, sauteed, oven roasted, or stir fried. Again, you can use the different herbs and things like turmeric and ginger and garlic, and they're all fine to have. So you can have all the flavor. You're just decreasing the carbs. And it's really important that you make sure to plan ahead. I think that's the biggest thing with this diet, is that if you plan ahead and you have enough food in the fridge, like batch cook, then you're just going to stop, grab something quick, and carry on with your busy life instead of, just going, oh, what am I going to eat? I don't have anything prepared and I don't know what to eat. And I'm just going to grab a handful of nuts, and then you feel horrible. So that's why it's really important to just, before, like maybe it's on a weekend, you just sit down with your partner, your spouse, or whoever is living with you, or maybe you're by yourself, and just kind of go through, okay, like what do we want to eat this week? You can see what's on special. You're going to get into a rhythm where like you'll just kind of go shopping and you'll see what's on special and you'll just buy that, and you'll just have in the back of your head enough recipes that you'll think, okay, well, I'm going to make this week and this, because that's what's on special. And that's what I do. I always look for what's on special, because right now it's ridiculous how all our groceries are so expensive. All right, so I'm going to go to your questions, see if you guys have any questions here. Hello, Lorena. Can we drink coffee? So, coffee will stimulate you, but it will stimulate the parasites also. And we really don't want to stimulate the parasites. So, that's why we avoid caffeine. But if you are having coffee regularly, then what our students would do is they would, a lot of people like to make their own coffee at home where they grind their own beans. Whatever the case, whether you buy ground coffee or whether you grind your own beans, just start to do like half caffeine and half decaffeinated grounds or the beans that are ground. That way you're kind of slowly decreasing the caffeine in your coffee so you don't get as bad of a headache. But it is really, really nice when you're not addicted to caffeine anymore. Like you won't, like with this diet and correcting your microbiome, you're not going to have the ups and downs where you're like, oh, it's the afternoon, I'm dragging myself, I need the caffeine to get going. You will find that you have sustained energy and you won't want to go back to the shakiness. And, even the fact that when you get off coffee and you have terrible headaches, that's not a good sign, right? And it's really hard for a lot of people to control the amount of caffeine they take in a day. So it's not health promoting. Once you're well, if you want to go back to it, you can. But again, once you're well, you'll have different values. Like you'll be like, I don't want to go back to that. I feel free right now. It's like me, if we're getting together with family and they have dessert, like they passed out, we had this big family get together, and it was really, I used to like this many years ago, like apple turnovers, and then they're from Costco, and then there were these like other little rolls that had chocolate in them. And to me, it looks disgusting. Like I wouldn't want to eat it because it's so artificial. Would I like a juicy, fresh peach? Absolutely. And unfortunately, in our area, they got wiped out with a terrible, like cold winter and late frost. So this is like the first time we have no apricots or peaches. But I don't eat those desserts because number one, I don't want to get back into that trap of craving that. And once you have recovered from a parasitic infestation, like we know enough how to decrease them enough so that you feel amazing. But have we figured out everything that you've completely sterilized your body? Are you going to be exposed to more parasites in the future? So it's really like a long-term plan. It's like a long-term goal. It's like I'm in my 60s. As long as I live on planet Earth, I just want to have the best quality of life. I want to stay out of the care homes as long as I can. I really hope to never have to be in a care home. Maybe I will have to when I'm 90 or 100 years old. But the biggest piece of the missing puzzle with health is really understanding how to manage your microbes. And diet is really the first step. So if you eat an abundance of processed carbohydrates, it really impacts your microbiome. It really promotes certain microbes and it discourages others. And so when we're really out of balance and we're sick, then we use that knowledge and that wisdom to go, okay, I'm going to use diet to help me to recover more quickly. When you're infested with parasites and then you are eating a lot of carbs and you're just really sick and weak, and then you start to treat with parasite drugs, it's not a pleasant experience. So that's why it's really important to make those parasites quiet, take some of the pressure off of your immune system. It's called natural immune modulation. And then you start to introduce the treatments, and then you will tolerate them better. You will recover quicker. And it is really shocking how much symptom improvement we can have with just diet alone. So this is something you can just go to my website, our website, livediseasefree.com. You can just check out all like what I eat. Again, breakfast is more greens and eggs, protein. If you're allergic to eggs, You can just make you can take leftover meat from the night before. You can also make a big batch of like homemade sausages, and you can add red pepper flakes and cumin or whatever spices you like. And then you can just freeze the extra so it's quick and easy. I'm all about quick and easy. Be really careful with bacon. It's usually contaminated with sugar. So I'll go to some more of your questions here. So, Deborah, can we drink tea, green tea, or herbal tea? So, green tea will have caffeine in it. So, we would avoid all caffeine when we're getting ready to treat and when we're treating. And then if your health has restored and you've been months, if not a year, like you want to do this for a long period of time where you're like, I have been symptom free for a long period of time. I feel absolutely amazing. You probably won't want green tea, but if you want it, then you can try it. And I don't think that's going to be harmful. But again, don't start too early because you're going to rip yourself off of an amazing quality of life. So, what kind of water? So, alkaline water or steam, distilled water. Distilled water is something you can use for very, very short term. It is demineralized and it's going to suck minerals out of your body wherever it's, in the stomach, etc. So it will help deplete you of minerals. So I would not drink distilled water ongoing. It is really good to definitely remove the chlorine out of the water. Activated charcoal is a really great place to start if you're in a situation where you're maybe in an apartment, it's not your home, you don't have a lot of money. Activated charcoal is really great to start. You want to make sure you're not taking in fluorine or fluoride. Fluoride in the water is not good. Reverse osmosis is pretty simple, but again, if it's just reverse osmosis and they haven't added minerals back in, it'll be quite acidic and it'll be similar to the distilled water where it'll be attracting minerals to it. It's void of minerals. So we wouldn't have really high alkaline water over a long period of time. I know that that's been kind of a craze, but again, always think about like, is that what's present in nature? No, water is around the pH of 7, so or a little bit higher. So slightly alkaline water is great, but highly alkaline water or acidic water, like I would not have those for long periods of time because you can disrupt things inside your body. So we just kind of, use common sense a lot of times. Avocado. So avocado, we would, in the recovery phase, we'd have like a slice or two, like open up your avocado, like cut it in half, open it up and have a slice or two on a big salad. So, and then those two slices, you cut them up so they're little pieces and you kind of mix it up. So it's a garnish. Avocados, if you eat a lot of them, they'll make you feel awful when you have a lot of parasites. Same thing with squash. So the zucchini squash seems to be a little easier to handle. It's a little lower carb, but the butternut and the Hubbard, the other squash, like if you eat a lot of those, that's just too many grams of carbs. You'll see if you use a Chronometer app that it's pretty easy to go over 30 to 40 total grams of carbs. The closer you get to 30 total grams of carbs, the more symptom improvements you'll have. And if you don't have symptom improvements, then the other things to look for are, do you have a lot of mold in your environment? Do you have a lot of wireless radiation in your environment? So those are the other two. And make sure you're sleeping. If you're not sleeping, your immune system is going to be quite weak. And then making sure you're having daily bowel movement. So those are kind of the important ones together with the low carb, where people, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had one person from the general public on one of my live events sharing that just by following the diet without my supervision, without my feedback on what they're eating and what they're not, so just trying their best with the guidelines I have on my website, that they're able to lift their leg up, to walk up the stairs, and able to write again, which is crazy. So that's just from diet alone. And I want you guys, like if you're going to start implementing the diet, I want you to be reporting back to me the symptom improvements that you're having, because I'm giving you this gift. And what you can do in return is to let me know if you're following it, to let me know what symptom improvements you have. So you can't do this haphazardly. You have to get serious about it. it can be life-changing just by changing your diet. And that is the first step. And then if you're like, okay, that was awesome, but I want my life back, then you need to treat the parasites. And that's something that we can help you to do in the Live Disease-Free plan. You can watch my masterclass training after. You can see all the steps we take for treatment, all the research, all the case studies of people that have recovered. And we have a lot of successes on our YouTube videos and Facebook. And also, I think we have a playlist on our YouTube channel, livediseasefree.com, and on our website. You'll see our website has an amazing blog. Go there and just look at the topics and pick and choose the topics that interest you. It is so educational. Like, I had one student, so a husband and wife students, and his background is like data, and he's worked on all kinds of computer, like collecting data and managing data. And he's like, your information that you have on your website and in your programs, he says, I have never seen anything like this. And this is like a little, 3-person show that we're doing. All the research I've done is what I've been doing, but we have a small staff and we're very efficient, but we have a system in place. And that's what he was so impressed by, is that such a clear system that really helps you to go step 1, step 2, step 3, how to get ready to treat and how to treat. And that's how people are recovering. And we have medical practitioners in our program right now and have taken our program because they can't get well in our standard of care. They don't want to live on the disease modifying drugs. All right. What do servings mean and how do they look? I'm so confused. So 9 to 13 servings. I think like one thing that Dr. Terry Walls mentioned is kind of like 3 platefuls of vegetables. Like, think of it that way. So it's almost like you're not going to do like 3 cups of Brussels sprouts because they'll be too high in carbs. You'll see on the Chronometer app that 3 cups of Brussels sprouts will be really high. But you might have, let's say, a half a cup serving or a little bit more of broccoli, and a half a cup serving or a little bit more of beans. And then you might have some leafy green vegetables with that. But your plate will be full and you're eating a variety of different vegetables, so you're getting different nutrition. So the people that have had the most success with following this diet is they're incorporating a lot of different types of leafy greens because those are the lowest carbohydrate. And then they're adding in a few other vegetables like the other ones that I mentioned, like the cruciferous vegetables. So things like cabbage and Brussels sprouts, you're not going to have like a plate full of that because you'll see that the carbs add up quickly, but you might have a half a cup of, if you want to do a coleslaw, or if you want to have a half a cup of Brussels sprouts, but you'll have more leafy greens. So the kale and the arugula and the different types of lettuce, spinach, all of those different greens, they are the lowest in carbs. So like, I remember Terry, who's on one of our successes that's on my masterclass training, I remember her saying, Pam, I'm eating buckets of salad, like tons of it. And she literally went from a scooter for 8 years, and she was able to come out of the scooter and she was able to start walking again through the prep phase. And I shouldn't say she didn't just start walking. She used crutches right at the start. If you haven't used your leg muscles, you're using crutches, you're starting to do squats in the doorway, you're starting to build up your muscles. You have to. If you haven't been using them, whatever we don't use, we lose. But just to know that, and before I forget, I wanted to mention too that if you're dealing with a lot of disability, we thought that that was permanent, that if you're in a wheelchair using a scooter, you can never get that back. But what we're seeing in our students is that there's a lot more recovery that you can have than you ever thought possible. So that's really important to know. So maybe your hand has been closed like for many, many years. And then after, following the diet and after several treatment cycles, all of a sudden, one morning it's open, and then you can start working with physiotherapy to start building back the strength in your hand. And mobility, so things like drop foot can resolve, spasticity goes away, people have more strength in their legs, they're able to, move their ankle, wiggle their toes, numbness goes away. with treating the parasites. And the diet really helps you to have some symptom improvements already. What about fermented black garlic? That's a good question. I would avoid things like that if you're really sick and disabled, because again, with the fermentation process, you don't know if there are some natural yeasts that are present. I would definitely avoid anything like that. When you keep things simple at the start, then there's less variables that could be preventing you from having the success that you want. So that's what you want to do, is you first want to just like have meat that you can use plain herbs and spices that are not having any fillers, and all the low carb vegetables and all the healthy fat. So you can have lots of flavor, but those kind of things like the fermented black garlic, I would wait with that until you have you're at a place where you're like, I feel amazing. And then if you add a little bit of the fermented black garlic to your whatever dish you're making and you still feel amazing, then you tolerate it. But don't start with things like that at the start. Hi, Klaus. You have a question. What about stevia as a sweetener? So we would avoid all sweeteners. When you have, as I mentioned, when you have these parasites, they make you crave sugar like a drug addiction, because that is their favorite source of energy. So when you get rid of your sweet tooth, and it usually takes about 7 to 10 days, like a week to a week and a half, if your carbs are low enough. And so it's really important that when you're taking all of these starchy foods out and all of the sugars out, if you eat regularly and you're having animal protein with the low carb vegetables with lots of healthy fat with every meal, that really helps to curb the cravings that you're dealing with. And you'll notice that they will subside. It's not like you won't crave sugar at all after a week or 2 weeks, but that intense craving will be gone. So in recovery, we recommend no stevia. And also sometimes some of the stevia products do have a little bit of sugar in them. So I would avoid all sweeteners, the alcohol, sugars, the stevia. Avoid that until you're well. And I personally don't even really like the taste of stevia. So Ryan said the liver disease-free mayo with herbs and herbamare and peppers rock. So yeah, so hot peppers, I love spicy, and parasites don't like spicy. So there's lots of mayonnaise recipes. Ours, it's just like, I think it's just the egg yolks, and then you drizzle in oil and you add a little bit of lemon juice, and then you can make a spicy mayo, or you can make the herb ranch dressing out of it, like with herbs, or you can make a creamy Caesar salad dressing. It's really good also. Herbamare, H-E-R-B, Herbamare. I should have brought it up here, but I've shared it on other videos. It's something you can get in most grocery stores. It's just like a seasoning salt with different herbs in it. It's very lovely. It really adds flavor. As far as soup, I wanted to mention about soups, because you can have soup, homemade soup, or chicken broth that doesn't have any yeast or sugar flavor added into it. But a lot of us have Borrelia, which is the bacteria that causes Lyme disease if you have MS or even other neurological diseases. And so Borrelia loves collagen. And so if you're having a lot of bone broth, so we don't recommend collagen, we don't recommend bone broth, because that's an iffy food that can you could be like, my carbs are so low, and why am I still having this tingling and this vibrating, and I'm just not improving? Take out all the broth out of your diet, and that might be what really helps you to have that last vice that's preventing you from moving forward. And if you have soup, like if you make a homemade soup, so there is like a hamburger soup that I make that I found works really well. I'll just take, let's say, 2 pounds of ground beef and, cook it, brown it, get some brown on it so it has some flavor. I'll add enough water to cover it, and then I will simmer that for maybe at least 30 minutes or longer if you have longer time, and then chop up a whole bunch of low-carb vegetables and saute them and add them to the broth. And you might like bay leaf in it, or like I really like, what I do in the summertime is I cut up a bunch of dill and I freeze it in quart jars. and it's just super fresh. I like that better than freeze dried or dried dill. And so I'll add a whole bunch of dill to the soup. But again, if you're having that kind of a soup with low carb vegetables, that will be like a serving. It's not going to be a meal. If you just have one or two bowls of that, you might sort of feel full at the start, but it's not going to be enough calories. So you have to make sure that you're eating enough like protein and so you can have that as a side. But if you're having soup regularly and you're not improving, take the broth out of your diet and see if that helps, because it is something that really makes a difference for a lot of people. But yeah, the homemade mayonnaise is great. And it takes like just a few minutes, and then you have a batch and you can make all kinds of different things. And it adds healthy fat to your diet. It adds calories that are actually very enjoyable. So according to Dr. Mercola, the chicken meat and the pork are not good because of the certain acid that's in it. So there's a lot of theories out there. So it's just like the lectins, for example, also. I've been on this journey for 35 years, and I've seen a lot of different opinions, and I do have a lot of respect for Dr. Mercola. But, this comes to the point where we can't really eat anything anymore. And so I think that the best thing to do is always buy the best quality food you can. You might not be able to afford all organic, but if you can try to source out the best food you can, try to buy as much local as possible. I think that's really important. I think it's really important to rotate the vegetables and the animal proteins that you're eating. If something that you're sensitive to, if you don't feel good when you eat something, then absolutely avoid it. There is something called a Coca pulse test. You can probably find it online, where you check your resting heart rate. If you're suspicious, like I think I'm allergic to eggs, but you're not sure and you don't really want to spend money going to get it tested, you can obviously, if something is anaphylactic, avoid it. But if it's just something that you think, I just might not tolerate this food, you can check it, test it 2 or 3 times, where you check your resting heart rate first thing in the morning, eat that food, check it right after. And if it consistently increases your resting heart rate, then you could be sensitive to that food. And if it's a very mild sensitivity, have it once every 4 or 5 days. And if you're super sensitive, just avoid it, right? Leaky gut causes a lot of sensitivities to foods that we should not be sensitive to. So as far as the chicken and the pork, like we have not had any issues with our students with those meats. So, like what if you can't afford beef, right? And you need to have animal protein. So I don't totally agree with that. We haven't seen that in our students. All right, what about the carbonated water like San Pellegrino? That's what I like the best. I mean, I'm hoping that they're pure enough, but San Pellegrino, Perrier, and I don't drink those all the time. But if I'm socializing, like I don't have them daily. Just be aware that anything carbonated is hard on your enamel, and you want to protect your teeth. So it's something that you have if you're visiting with friends and it's a hot day and you really want that. But a nice herbal tea is also great. And there's so many great herb teas that are not going to be a problem. Does dairy products bother MS? Absolutely. So the only dairy product that isn't a problem would be butter. And for some people, they do better with ghee. So MS is caused by the parasites. So the dairy, especially if it's good quality dairy, it's not something that we should be drinking glasses of milk, because we're not cows. But if you're having some cheese, if you're healthy, small amounts in moderation, it's probably fine, especially good quality. But when you're infested with parasites, the natural milk sugars, but also the milk protein, because it's very similar to the gluten protein, which people are sensitive to gluten, then they'd be sensitive to the dairy. So it's just going to be hard on your immune system. So avoid all dairy except for butter, but ghee would be better. Okay, I'm going to go just share with you a few successes that from our students that came in. So every week we have a live Q&A call in the Live Disease Free plan. We have a lot of wellness champions that are on their journey to recover from chronic disease. So The successes, the updates I'm going to share with you are just from people that are just following the diet and they're not treating yet. So some of our other students, they're all at different places. Some are treating parasites, some are just starting and they're just following the diet. Some maybe have followed the diet for a few weeks. But with the first student, and I'll keep it anonymous because they're in the program, so he shared that he's following the Live Disease-Free diet, and he said, my sleep is the best that it has ever been. I fall asleep almost immediately at night now, and I sleep until morning. This after being an insomniac for 40 years, my energy level has improved a lot. So this is part of the prep phase. You want to be feeling better before you're treating. And his bowels, he said, I am completely regular. I'm having 2 to 3 bowel movements per day. That's another important thing we want to have accomplished before we start treating. And so just with the diet and with the diet and making sure he's having daily bowel movements and his sleep is good now. So he has said that my left thigh that was completely numb for months, it is now returning to normal. I didn't think that was possible. I almost don't even notice it anymore as it is returning to a normal sensation. This is such a blessing. It brings tears to my eyes. So that's huge. like being numb on the left side, not being able to feel that for months and having that return to normal just with diet, that is more than the MS drugs are doing. That is more than the immunosuppressive drugs for any disease are doing. And now he's able to exercise more. So he wasn't feeling well. So a lot of our students, they're not exercising well when they're not feeling well. But I am attempting to return to activity after several years of being very sedentary and losing significant muscle mass. I'm currently doing 3 sets of weight curls 3 times a week and 2 sets of 50 push-ups daily. So the fact that he can do that is amazing. And then another student who's quite new in the program just followed the diet for, I think, a couple of weeks. He's a healthcare professional and recovering from multiple sclerosis. Improvements that I've noticed, I'm sleeping better. I'm only waking up 1 time per night. I used to wake up 2 or more times every night to urinate. As a side note, in the past, I have tried a few medications for nighttime urination, which did nothing. Most allopathic physicians would never associate excessive nighttime urination with diet. And that is such a good, important point because that's one of the first symptoms we see improving. A lot of our students have the frequent urination during the day, but also at night. And by lowering their carbs enough, it's night and day. They might get up 5 or 6 times a night to go to the bathroom before they start the diet. And then after the diet, they might only get up once or twice as this student is doing. He's also having daily bowel movements. He's started doing the oxygen or the oxidizing agent enemas every other day. He said, I've noticed already that I have less tingling in both hands, and I'm eager to start implementing slowly treating these infections, treating the parasites. Another student who does not have multiple sclerosis, but just a lot of cognitive and other health issues, he said, I have had an excellent week. I think you correcting me, Pam, on the total versus net carbs made a big difference. So again, I told you, we're not measuring net carbs, we're measuring total grams of carbs. My thought processes have been amazingly better. So his cognitive function has improved significantly. A specific example has to do with a certification I need to have completed by the end of September. So for his work that he's doing. And he said, I've been fighting with this for over 1.5 years. I just haven't had the drive or the focus to get this done. I'm happy to say that I have almost completed it over the last week, which considering I had hardly anything done prior to this week is wonderful. My wife has been very encouraged to see me being able to get this done and have a flashback to some of the drive and determination that I had in my past life. So that's the exciting thing is we can go back to our past life. I've been telling her that it is the getting the carbs right and Pam straightening me out. Thank you so much, Pam. So awesome. And then the next student shared, I want to tell you that your diet has really changed the course of my life and my career. I am I am so close to fully achieving the life that I have been working to regain. I want to share some of the highlights of my improvements recently. My business went from selling to 17 stores. Now I'm selling to over 76 stores and rapidly growing. Meals are meaningful to me again. I actually feel like my body is being fed. I have regained, I have been regaining my balance, reaction time, strength, and stamina when I skateboard. This is a blessing for my mental health as I can actually improve again. It has been very hard watching my ability fall apart over the years, but now I have, but, but I see now that I have not lost that ability. I have just been disabled by my condition until now. So that is the exciting thing, is that we can have so much more recovery than we thought possible by starting to get the inflammation down and then treating the parasites. And the last student I wanted to share, so this is a student in Europe. We have students all over the world, and he was diagnosed with MS, and he scoured the scientific literature. I think he's in the UK, he's in Europe somewhere. So he scoured the literature for, I believe it was 4 years, looking for a clue, like what could be causing this MS. And then he somehow stumbled across my videos. He started watching them. And he's like, I've never, ever had the slightest hint of that parasites could be causing MS. And he's like, it makes so much sense. And he was blown away that he's never, ever come across any clue that that's what's causing his disease. So he started just the diet and supporting the body. And he said, this week I have had even more improvement. I have almost no symptoms. And for the first time after a long time, I went with my friend and I played a little bit of volleyball. So that was before he started treating the parasites. And not everyone is going to have that much success. He's not as disabled as some of our other students, but you just never know. Like, you just don't know what symptoms are going to improve, but it's usually the ones that are bothering us the most when you get the carbs low enough. So it's not enough to follow my cheat sheet and say, well, Pam said I could have avocado. She said I could have nuts and seeds, but how much are you having? And that is the determining factor, if your carbs are low enough. All right. So I'm going to let you guys go here. I think that's all that I wanted to share. There are more questions. Just, you can keep sending your questions in. That's wonderful. Our team will answer them. But if you're at the place where you're like, this is the first time that you've met myself and the work that we do, make sure to go to our website, livediseasefree.com. Under research, you will see the Live Disease Free Diet Guidelines, and go through all of that a couple of times. And then make a plan for yourself and start to shift your diet. You will see that you're going to have like amazing symptom improvements if your carbs are closer to 30 total grams of carbs. Like under 50, but closer to 30 is where you'll notice the greatest improvements. And then make sure to share those successes with me, because that really keeps me going. That really fires us up. And then if you are at the place where like, okay, I've been looking at her blog posts, I've been learning about all the infections that are involved, I don't have a practitioner that can help me. We can help you in the Live Disease Free plan. So then you would watch my masterclass training. You'll learn all the steps we take to recover from these parasites. You'll see the case studies, the research, the steps. And then if you need support from us, make sure to fill out the form. And then you can book a time and chat with me to see if it's a good fit for you. And we help students all over the world, helping them to access treatments and practitioners that they need in order to recover from these parasites. But diet is the first step. So make sure to check out the Live Disease Free Diet and follow it. And if you enjoy this information I'm sharing, if you find it helpful, please help us to get the word out by liking this video and sharing it with other groups, and then also subscribing so that you hear when I'm sharing the next video, the next live event. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you next week. Take care and bye-bye for now.